going to talk about a little bit the Sharon Tate murders and a little bit about the Manson family. I was going to have an episode about the Manson family. I might, maybe in the next year or so, too. Not sure. Um, but yeah, because that's the whole thing onto itself. But we'll talk about the Tate LaBianca murder. So mainly the Tate murders. We'll leave the LaBianca murders to if I decide to do an episode on the Manson family and Charles Manson. So the Tate murders occurred August of 1969 and were committed by the Manson family. On the night of August 8th, 4 members of the Manson family invaded a rented home of actress Sharon Tate.
Fun fact, she was actually renting it from dude who produced a bunch of the Beach Boys albums.
Yeah.
It wasn't even her house. He was just off somewhere, and Roman Polanski was filming her husband at the time, and they were just chilling at the house. It wasn't even her house. And Manson family actually went after the house because they were mad about...
Well, yeah, Charles Manson was mad because he had hooked up with the Beach Boys. What was it, Brian Wilson?
I think it was Dennis. He was mostly
Dennis.
Involved with Dennis. He was kind of like the wild one.
Yeah, and Dennis, I guess Dennis thought that Charlie's songwriting was good. I don't know how anyone could think Charles Manson's songwriting. Even if he...
You do when you're an edgy teenager.
Yeah,
a.k.a. me.
Like, separating, like, say he never committed any of these murders, which Charles Manson personally, that's a myth that needs to be cleared up. Charles Manson never actually killed anyone. He directed people to kill people. That's why he was in jail for life. And he's a piece of shit. But suppose he never ordered anyone to kill people. And he comes up to you and he hands you a bunch of songs. And literally you read them. Go online. I think they print his songwriting online.
You can find his whole album online, and it's just a bunch of, like, weird, like, psychedelic folky garbage, but, like, there was a lot of, like, good psychedelic folk out at that time, because it was the 60s, and everyone was dropping acid and, like, making really weird music. Mm-hmm. Some of that music was good. Some of that music was not very good.
Yeah.
Music that was not very good was Charles Manson.
That's it.
So they start giving him the runaround. They're, like... You know, at first they're partying with him, and then it's like, then the Beach Boys and their whole circle are, everyone's like, alright, this guy's a little weird, this guy's a little too much, we shouldn't hang around him. So the Beach Boys and their producer and their inner circle start giving Manson and the Manson family, like, the runaround. They just ghost him. They're like, see you later, bye.
Yeah, because the guy's fucking weird.
Manson did not like that.
At all. No. So he was plotting to get revenge, and he wanted to get revenge on this producer and Dennis Wilson, I believe his last name. Yeah, but they weren't home, and Sharon Tate the actress was renting the home. Again, Roman Polanski was out of the country filming a movie. This house
probably molesting under.
No. Okay. I'll get to my Roman Polanski thing after we discuss this case because I got a lot to go in on Roman Polanski, but I'll save it.
The R. Kelly of pretentious films.
I would say this about Roman Polanski. I treat him differently than R. Kelly, and I'm gonna tell you why. But let's get to this murder. This house was on 10050 Clinton Drive in Los Angeles. The murderers of the Manson family were Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Crimwell, under the direction of Charles Manson. Watson drove Atkins, Crimwell, and Linda Carban to the Spawn Ranch in the direction of Cleo Drive. So was that the LaBianca murders, or? Okay, let's go. Let's start off with that. Sorry about that. No, it's... So on the night of August 8th, 1965, Tex Watkins took Susan Atkins, Linda Carbassian, and Patricia Krimwinkle to the house where Mentor used to live, as Manson had instructed him, to totally destroy everyone in it and to do it as gruesome as you can. Manson told the women to do as Watson instructed them. Krimwinkle was one of the early family members and met Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, where he picked her up hitchhiking. The occupants at the home that evening were actress Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant with the child of her husband, Roman Polanski, her friend and former lover, Jay Sebring, a noted hairstylist, Polanski's friend and inspiring screenwriter, Wojciech Frykowski, and Frykowski's lover, Abigail Forger.
Fun fact, the hairstylist, Jay, he is actually the person, you know those like famous pictures of Jim Morrison where he's shirtless with like the necklace?
Yeah.
And his like haircut, like that's famous. He was the hairstylist behind Jim Morrison's like famous haircut.
So pretty much a very famous hairstylist.
Yeah, like a bunch, basically just think about it like, you know, in modern day terms, you have a bunch of influencers and, you know, famous people just hanging out, having a dinner party.
Yeah. And Abigail Forger was the last person in the house. She was heir to the Forges' coffee fortune and daughter of Peter Forger. Polanski, again, was in Europe working on a film project. Music producer Quincy Jones was a friend of Sebring. He had planned to join him that evening, but did not go. Jesus, I didn't know that. Who was got Quincy Jones? Holy shit!
Seriously, that is something I did not know.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Sebring had also invited Steve McQueen to the party at Tate's house at the night of the murders. McQueen said he invited his girlfriend to come along, but she suggested an intimate night at home. And they almost got Steve. I don't know. Steve McQueen was there.
I mean, he met a different fate.
Yeah, cancer. That was years later, but Steve McQueen was there. They might. I don't know. Steve McQueen was a pretty tough guy. Excuse me. This specific house was chosen because both Watson and Manson had been there at least one other occasion, and Watson was familiar with the layout. The murder team arrived at Clio Drive just past midnight on August 9th, 1969. Watson climbed a telephone pole near the entrance gate and cut the phone lines to the house. The murderers backed their car to the bottom of the hill that led to the estate and walked up to the house. They thought the gate might be electrified or equipped with an alarm, so they climbed a bushy embankment to the right of the gate and entered the grounds. Headlights approached them from within the Angle property, and Watson ordered the women to line a bush. He stepped out and ordered the approaching driver to halt. Stephen Parent had been visiting the property's caretaker, Richard Garrison, who lived in the guest house. Watson leveled a .22 caliber revolver at Parent, and a frightened youth begged him not to hurt him, claimed that he would not say anything. Watson lunged at Parent with a knife, giving him a defensive slash wound to the palm of his hand that severed tendons and tore the boy's watch off his wrist. He then shot him 4 times in the chest and abdomen, killing him. Watson ordered the woman to push the car further up the driveway. Watson next cut the screen of a window and told Carbassian to keep watch down by the gate. He walked over to Parent's car and waited. Watson removed the screen, entered through the window, and let Atkins and Krimwinkle in through the front door. He whispered to Atkins and awoke Frykowski, who was sleeping on the living room couch. Watson kicked him in the head, and Frykowski asked him who he was and what he was doing here. Watson replied, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." In Watson's direction, Atkins found the home's 3 other occupants with Krimwinkle's help and forced them to the living room. Watson began to tie Tate and Sebring together by their necks with rope which he had brought and slung it over one of the living room ceiling's beams. Sebring protested the murderer's rough treatment of the pregnant Tate, so Watson shot him. Forger was taken momentarily back to her room for a purse, and she gave the murderers $70. Watson then stabbed Sebring several times. Farkowski's hands had been bound with a towel, but he freed himself and began struggling with Atkins, who stabbed at his legs with a knife. He fought his way out the front door and onto the porch, but Watson caught up with him, struck him over the head with a gun multiple times, stabbed him repeatedly, and shot him twice. Kardashian had heard horrifying sounds and moved forward the house from position in the driveway. She told Atkins that someone was coming and attempted to stop the murder. Inside the house, Forger escaped from Krimwinkle and fled out of the bedroom door to the pool area. Krimwinkle pursued her and caught her in the front lawn where she stabbed her and tackled her to the ground. Watson then helped finish her off. Her assailant stabbed her a total of 28 times. Frankowski struggled across the lawn, but Watson murdered him with a final flurry of stabbing. Frankowski suffered 51 stab wounds and had been struck 13 times in the head with the butt of Watson's gun, which bent the barrel and broke off one side of the gun grips, which was recovered at the scene. In the house, Tate pleaded to be allowed to live long enough to give birth and offered herself as a hostage in an attempt to save the life of an unborn child. But both Atkins and Watkins stabbed Tate 16 times, killing her. Benson had told the women to leave aside something witchy. So Atkins wrote pig on the front door in Tate's blood. They tried to blame the Black Panther Party for this murder.
Yep. Yeah, one of the most brutal murders ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, without question. And honestly, I didn't know before this podcast that The Strangers was based on that, but it all kind of makes sense now. Just, the creepy vibe if you're just at home and all of a sudden, people come in and they just want to fuck with you and kill you. Yeah,
because The Strangers goes, I talk about a little of the plot of The Strangers. These two, James and Krista, arrive at night at James' childhood home, returning from a friend's wedding. They're pretty much pissed off because, pretty much James is pissed off because Christian rejected James' marriage proposal at the reception. James calls his friend Mike, asks him to pick him up in the morning shortly after 4 a.m. There's a loud knock on the door. A young blonde woman whose face is obscured by poor lighting asks the couple, is Tamala home? But is turned away by James, saying, no, there's no Tamala here. James then goes for a drive to purchase a pack of cigarettes for Christian. Before he departs, he starts a fire in the heath chimney. Kirsten realizes the chimney flue is closed, attempts to open it, smoke begins coming through, triggers the smoke alarm. Kirsten attempts to disarm the smoke alarm, which is startled by another knock on the door. She drops the alarm to the floor, unnerved. She calls James' cell phone from the landline, but the call is cut short. Kirsten returns to the kitchen. Unbeknownst to her, a man in a mask watches her from the adjacent hallway. They begin this cat and mouse fucking game. All throughout, their friend ends up showing up. He ends up getting accidentally killed by James when James comes back, and he finds out the people are in the home. They finally take him, and pretty much Kirsten asks why are they doing this, and pretty much one of the girls, which they call Dollface, replies, because you're home. And then the strangers unmask themselves and then begin stabbing them in the chest and abdomen. And leaving them to die. Two missionaries end up stumbling into the place, and the last scene of the movie is you think both of Kirsten and James are dead. Kirsten just gets up one final scream, and Olivia ambiguous whether she survived or not. But according to the sequel, she did not survive. So, yeah. And which is sort of like the Tate and LaBianca murders. Again, we're not going to get into LaBianca murders because I'm going to save that for the Manson family.
Yeah, but still very, very similar MOs.
Very similar. Yeah, very similar. Yeah. So eventually the Manson family is caught. Eventually we'll save that in the trial. And they're all given life since. Well, death sentence. They were given a death sentence, and death sentence was commuted to life.